She thought it was just a stray dog in the rain, until she opened the bag he carried and recognized the impossible. The rain pounded against the pavement with a relentless fury, turning the small town of Maplewood into a glistening maze of puddles and streams. Emma Bennett hurried along the sidewalk, her umbrella struggling against the wind as she made her way home from her late shift at the community clinic. As a veterinary assistant, she'd seen her fair share of emergencies, but tonight had been particularly draining, a car accident involving a family and their golden retriever. Thankfully, all had survived, though the dog would need weeks of recovery. Emma's apartment was still 15 minutes away, and her scrubs were already soaked despite her best efforts with the umbrella. The late October chill had settled into her bones, making her long for the warmth of her small but cozy home, a cup of hot chocolate, and the company of her own rescue cat, Milo. The streetlights cast eerie, wavering reflections on the wet asphalt as Emma turned onto Oak Ridge Avenue, a shortcut through the park that would shave a few precious minutes off her journey. The path was deserted, not surprising given the weather and the late hour. Most of Maplewood's residents were already tucked away in their homes, safe from the storm that had descended upon their town with unexpected intensity. That's when she saw it, a dark shape moving awkwardly along the edge of the park. Emma squinted through the curtain of rain, her steps slowing as she tried to make sense of what she was seeing. A dog, medium-sized and drenched to the skin, was making its way determinedly along the path. But there was something odd about its movements, something hanging from its mouth. "Hey there," Emma called softly, her professional instincts kicking in. The dog stopped, turning to face her with alert ears. Now she could see it clearly, a black and tan shepherd mix, possibly part Rottweiler, carrying what looked like a small bag in its mouth. The animal stood its ground, watching her with intelligent eyes that reflected the streetlight. Emma knelt down, balancing her umbrella precariously as she extended her free hand. "It's okay, buddy. I'm not going to hurt you." She kept her voice gentle, using the same soothing tone that had calmed countless anxious animals at the clinic. The dog hesitated, its body tense. It took a tentative step forward, then stopped again, clearly torn between flight and the possibility of help. Emma remained still, allowing the animal to make its decision. After what seemed like an eternity, the dog moved toward her, slow, calculated steps bringing it within reach. Now Emma could see that the bag was a small, sodden backpack, the kind children might use for carrying treasures or snacks. The dog stood before her, its coat streaming with water, but its grip on the bag remained firm. "What have you got there?" Emma murmured, gently reaching out. To her surprise, the dog released the bag into her hand, then backed up a step, watching intently as if waiting for her reaction. The backpack was lightweight, but definitely contained something. Emma's curiosity piqued as she carefully unzipped it, holding it under her umbrella to shield it from the relentless downpour. What she found inside made her heart stop. Nestled within the wet fabric was a tiny kitten, no more than a few weeks old, curled up and shivering but very much alive. Its gray fur was damp, and its eyes were closed tight against the world, but a soft mewl confirmed that it was fighting to survive. "Oh my God," Emma gasped, quickly zipping the bag partially closed to protect the kitten from the rain. She looked up at the dog, who continued to watch her with those intelligent eyes. Did you rescue this little one?" The dog whined softly, moving closer to nudge the bag with its nose as if checking on its charge. The gesture was so deliberate, so concerned, that Emma felt tears spring to her eyes despite the absurdity of the situation. "Come on," she said, making a quick decision. "Let's get you both somewhere warm." Emma tucked the backpack carefully inside her jacket, creating a makeshift shelter for the kitten against her body heat. Then she stood, adjusting her umbrella to cover herself and the dog as best she could. "This way," she encouraged, taking a few steps in the direction of her apartment. To her relief, the dog followed, staying close to her side as they navigated the rain-slick paths toward Emma's building. By the time they reached the 3-story brick structure, both were thoroughly soaked, but the kitten remained protected. Emma lived on the 2nd floor of the converted Victorian house, in a 1-bedroom apartment that her landlady, Mrs. Winters, had rented to her at a discount when she learned Emma worked at the animal clinic. Now, Emma sent up a silent prayer that the kind older woman wouldn't choose this moment to check her mail or take out trash. "Quiet now," she whispered to the dog as they slipped through the front entrance and up the stairs. The dog seemed to understand, following her with barely a sound beyond the soft click of its nails on the hardwood steps. Once inside her apartment, Emma quickly closed the door behind them and turned on the lights. The dog stood in the entryway, water pooling beneath it on the welcome mat, watching as Emma gently removed the backpack from inside her jacket. "Let's see what we've got here," she murmured, carrying the kitten to her small kitchen counter. She grabbed a clean towel from a drawer and carefully extracted the tiny creature, wrapping it gently in the soft fabric. The kitten protested weakly, its tiny voice barely audible as Emma rubbed it dry with gentle motions. As she worked, she became aware of another presence. Her cat, Milo, a 3-year-old orange tabby she'd rescued from the clinic after he'd been abandoned, was watching the proceedings from the doorway with suspicious eyes. His attention was divided between the intruder standing by the door and the small bundle in Emma's hands. "Milo, we have guests," Emma said softly. "Be nice." The dog, still dripping on the mat, lowered its head slightly at the sight of the cat, but made no aggressive moves. Instead, it seemed more concerned with the kitten, stretching its neck to try to see what Emma was doing. "You're a good dog, aren't you?" Emma said, her professional assessment kicking in despite the unusual circumstances. The dog was thin but not emaciated, and though soaked to the skin, its coat seemed relatively well kept. There was no collar, but its behavior suggested it had been someone's pet at some point. "Let me take care of this little one, and then we'll get you dried off too." The kitten was starting to respond to the warmth, its tiny body vibrating with purrs as Emma gently rubbed life back into its limbs. It was a little gray tabby with white paws, probably no more than 4 weeks old, far too young to be away from its mother. How it had ended up in that backpack, and how the dog had come to be carrying it through the storm, were mysteries that would have to wait. Emma's training took over as she examined the kitten for injuries or signs of illness. Besides being cold and frightened, it seemed remarkably healthy. Its eyes were clear, its tiny pink nose was moist, and once it had warmed up a bit, it began to show interest in its surroundings, its tiny head swiveling to take in the strange new environment. "You're a lucky little thing," Emma told it, cradling it against her chest as she turned her attention back to the dog. "Now for you. Stay there. I'll bring you a towel." But when she returned from the bathroom with a large bath towel, she found the dog had not moved an inch from the welcome mat, as if understanding that it shouldn't drip water all over her floors. The sight of such consideration from an animal that had just performed what could only be described as a rescue mission brought a fresh wave of emotion to Emma's throat. She approached slowly, the kitten still cradled in one arm, and knelt down to the dog's level. "Thank you," she said softly, looking into those intelligent eyes. "I don't know how you knew to bring this little one to someone who could help, but you did the right thing." The dog's tail wagged slightly, a tentative thump against the wall behind it. Emma carefully set the kitten down in a small box lined with another towel, placing it where both she and the dog could see it. Then she returned her attention to drying the dog, who stood patiently as she rubbed the water from its coat. As she worked, Emma's mind raced with questions. Where had the dog come from? How had it found the kitten? And what had possessed it to place the tiny creature in a backpack and carry it through the storm? The behavior was extraordinary, the kind of thing people posted about on social media with captions like, "You won't believe what this heroic dog did." The dog's coat was finally beginning to dry, revealing a handsome black and tan pattern that confirmed her initial assessment of Shepherd and Rottweiler ancestry. It was a male, probably around 2 years old, with no visible injuries, but a few small scars that spoke of a hard life. "You need a name," Emma mused, scratching behind his ears. The dog leaned into her touch, his eyes half closing in pleasure. "How about Hero? Seems fitting after what you did tonight." The newly named Hero responded with another gentle wag of his tail, then turned his attention back to the box where the kitten was now attempting to climb out, its tiny claws scrabbling against the cardboard. Milo, who had been watching the proceedings with growing interest, chose that moment to approach, his orange tail held high in cautious curiosity. Emma tensed, ready to intervene if either animal showed signs of aggression, but to her surprise, Hero simply lowered his head in a non-threatening gesture, allowing the cat to approach and sniff him. After a moment of tense evaluation, Milo seemed to accept the dog's presence, turning his attention instead to the box and its tiny occupant. He peered inside, his whiskers twitching as he examined the kitten. "What do you think, Milo? Can they stay the night?" Emma asked, knowing full well that regardless of her cat's opinion, there was no way she was putting either animal back out in the storm. Tomorrow would be soon enough to check for microchips, post found notices, and figure out what to do next. The immediate concern was making sure both animals were fed and comfortable. Emma filled a shallow bowl with warm water for Hero and set out some of Milo's food, which the dog accepted gratefully. The kitten would need special care, formula from the clinic, which fortunately Emma had access to. As she moved around her small apartment, preparing for an unexpected night of animal care, Emma couldn't help but marvel at the strange turn her evening had taken. Just an hour ago, she'd been trudging home in the rain, exhausted, and looking forward to solitude. Now her apartment contained double the number of animals it had before, and she was somehow involved in what could only be described as a rescue story of unusual proportions. Hero finished his meal and settled on the welcome mat, his eyes never leaving the box containing the kitten. His dedication touched something deep in Emma's heart. Whatever the full story was, and she was determined to uncover it, this dog had gone above and beyond what anyone would expect of an animal. He had recognized a life in danger and had taken action, somehow knowing to seek human help. "You're something special, aren't you?" Emma said softly, kneeling to stroke his now merely damp coat. Hero looked up at her with those soulful eyes, and Emma felt a connection form between them, a bond forged in the strangest of circumstances, but no less real for it. Outside, the rain continued to fall, but inside Emma's apartment, an unexpected family was beginning to take shape, brought together by an act of heroism that defied explanation but demanded acknowledgement. What Emma didn't know, couldn't know, was that this rainy night encounter was just the beginning of a story far more complex and astonishing than she could imagine. The contents of that small backpack would lead her down a path that would change not just her life, but the lives of many in the small town of Maplewood. Morning came with gentle rays of sunlight filtering through Emma's curtains, the storm having passed during the night. She opened her eyes to an unfamiliar weight across her legs and found Hero sprawled across the foot of her bed, his head resting protectively near the makeshift nest she'd created for the kitten. Milo was curled up on her pillow, seemingly unbothered by the new sleeping arrangements. Emma had spent half the night feeding the kitten with a tiny dropper, worried about its survival chances. The little fighter had accepted the formula eagerly, giving Emma hope that despite its rough start, it might pull through. She'd named it Pocket, a reference to its unusual mode of transportation. "Morning, everyone," Emma murmured, carefully extracting herself from the tangle of animals. Hero lifted his head immediately, fully alert despite the early hour. His eyes tracked her movements as she checked on Pocket, who was sleeping peacefully, tiny belly rounded from the night's feedings. "I've got to get ready for work," she told Hero, who watched her with that same intelligent gaze that had struck her the night before, "and figure out what to do with you two." As a veterinary assistant, Emma knew the protocol for found animals: check for microchips, report to local shelters, post notices online. But something about Hero's deliberate actions the night before made her hesitate. This wasn't a typical stray dog scenario. He had been on a mission, carrying that kitten to safety through the storm. There was more to this story. In the bathroom, as she brushed her teeth, Emma examined the backpack more closely. It was a child's bag, navy blue with faded superhero patches sewn onto it. Inside, besides the lingering dampness, she found something she'd missed the night before: a small, zippered pocket. Carefully opening it, she discovered a folded piece of paper protected by a plastic sandwich bag. Her hands trembled slightly as she extracted the note. Written in a childish scrawl were the words, "Please take care of Smokey. Daddy says we can't keep him anymore. Hero will protect him until you find him. I'm sorry." Emma sat down on the edge of the bathtub, the note clutched in her hand. A child had trusted this dog to deliver a kitten to safety, along with a heartbreaking note. The implications were staggering. Not only had Hero understood his mission, but he had executed it perfectly, finding perhaps the one person in town best equipped to help, someone who worked at an animal clinic. Was it just luck that Emma had been the one to find him in the park? Or had Hero somehow sought her out specifically? She shook her head, trying to make sense of it all. The logical part of her brain insisted it must be coincidence, but something deeper whispered that there was more at work here. After getting dressed, Emma returned to find Hero sitting patiently by the door, while Milo watched from the kitchen counter and Pocket slept on, oblivious to the decisions being made about its future. "I'm going to take you to work with me," she told Hero, making a quick decision. "Dr. Levine needs to see you, and I want to check if you have a microchip. Plus, Pocket needs proper veterinary care." Hero's tail wagged at the sound of her voice, though Emma wasn't sure how much he understood. She'd need to rig up a temporary leash. She had some spare leashes at the clinic, but nothing at home. A length of soft rope from her emergency kit would have to do. Hero stood perfectly still as she fashioned it into a makeshift collar and leash, as if he'd worn one all his life. Emma carefully placed Pocket in a small carrier usually reserved for Milo's trips to the vet, cushioning the bottom with soft towels. "I'll be back tonight, Milo," she promised her cat, who blinked slowly in response. "Try not to get too jealous." The walk to the Maplewood Animal Clinic was mercifully dry after the previous night's downpour. Hero walked perfectly at her side, no pulling or straying, his attention occasionally turning to the carrier in Emma's hand where Pocket slept on. People they passed turned to look at the handsome dog, and Emma found herself wondering again about his origins. He was too well-behaved to have been a stray all his life. Dr. Levine was already at the clinic when they arrived, reviewing charts for the day's appointments. She looked up in surprise as Emma entered with her unusual entourage. "Morning, Emma. I see you've brought some friends." The veterinarian's eyes twinkled with curiosity as she set aside her tablet and came around the desk. "Found them in the rain last night," Emma explained, setting the carrier down gently. "Or rather, he found me." She quickly recounted the strange encounter, showing Dr. Levine the backpack and the note. The older woman listened with growing amazement, kneeling to examine Hero, who submitted to her gentle hands with dignified patience. "In all my 30 years of practice, I've never heard anything quite like this," Dr. Levine admitted, checking Hero's teeth and coat condition. "He's in surprisingly good shape for a stray, if he is one. Let's check for a microchip." The scanner passed over Hero's shoulders and neck, beeping when it detected the tiny identifier between his shoulder blades. Emma felt a mixture of relief and disappointment. Relief that they might be able to solve the mystery, disappointment at the thought of having to give him up. "Let's see what we've got," Dr. Levine said, entering the chip number into their database. After a moment, she frowned. "That's odd. The chip is registered, but the information is minimal. Just a name, Hero actually, and a phone number with a Lakeside area code. That's about 40 miles north of here." "Lakeside?" Emma repeated, surprised. "That's quite a journey for a dog carrying a kitten." "Indeed it is." Dr. Levine turned her attention to Pocket, carefully extracting the tiny kitten from the carrier. "And how's our little passenger doing?" As the vet examined Pocket, Emma found herself staring at the phone number on the screen. Whose number was it? The child who wrote the note? The daddy who said they couldn't keep the kitten? And why had Hero traveled so far with his precious cargo? "The kitten's doing remarkably well, considering," Dr. Levine announced after a thorough examination. "About 4 weeks old, slightly undernourished but no serious health issues. He'll need regular feedings and monitoring, but I think he'll make it." Emma hadn't had time to check the kitten's gender the night before. "Yes, it's a little boy, and I think Pocket suits him better than Smokey." Dr. Levine smiled, returning the kitten to his temporary home. "Now, about that phone number, shall we give it a call?" Emma nodded, her curiosity outweighing her reluctance to potentially part with Hero. Dr. Levine dialed the number and put it on speaker, but after several rings, it went to a generic voicemail message with no name. "Hello, this is Dr. Levine from Maplewood Animal Clinic. We found a dog registered to this number, a shepherd mix named Hero. Please call us back at your earliest convenience." She left the clinic's number and ended the call. "What now?" Emma asked, absently stroking Hero's head. "Now we wait. In the meantime, I suggest you file a found report with both the Maplewood and Lakeside Animal Controls. Post notices online too, if no one claims him in the required holding period." "Well?" Dr. Levine gave Emma a knowing look. "I've seen how you look at him." Emma blushed but didn't deny it. There was something special about Hero beyond his extraordinary actions. She felt connected to him already. The morning progressed into a busy day at the clinic. Emma set up a comfortable space for Hero in the staff break room, where he settled contentedly, seemingly happy to be wherever she was. Pocket remained in the treatment area, where the staff took turns feeding him and monitoring his condition. Word of Hero's remarkable journey spread quickly among the clinic staff and then to the patients who came through. By lunchtime, several people had asked to meet the Hero dog, and he greeted each visitor with gentle dignity, accepting their admiration as if it were his due. "You're becoming quite the celebrity," Emma told him during her lunch break, sharing her sandwich with him despite knowing she probably shouldn't. Still no call from that number, though. As the afternoon wore on, Emma found herself hoping no one would call. The thought of Hero belonging to someone else, someone who might have allowed him to wander 40 miles in the rain, bothered her deeply. And what about the child who had written that note? What circumstances had led to such a desperate measure? At closing time, Dr. Levine approached Emma with a thoughtful expression. "Still no word from Hero's registered owner," she said. "I'm concerned about that. It's been a full day." "Maybe they're away from home and don't know he's missing," Emma suggested, though she didn't really believe it. "Perhaps." Dr. Levine didn't sound convinced either. "Emma, why don't you take Hero and Pocket home with you again tonight? Tomorrow, if we still haven't heard anything, we might need to do some deeper digging. There's something about this situation that doesn't sit right with me." Emma nodded, relieved at the suggestion. "I was thinking the same thing, and I'm happy to keep them both." As they prepared to leave, Emma gathering supplies for Pocket's overnight care, the clinic phone rang. Dr. Levine answered it, her expression changing as she listened to the caller. "Yes, he's here. Black and tan shepherd mix, about 2 years old." A pause. "May I ask how he came to be 40 miles from home?" Another, longer pause. "I see. Well, the situation is a bit unusual. He was found carrying a kitten in a child's backpack, along with a note." Emma watched Dr. Levine's face closely, trying to gauge the conversation. Hero sat at her feet, his ears perked forward as if he too were listening intently. "I understand," Dr. Levine said finally. "Tomorrow at 10 a.m. would be fine. Yes, we'll expect you then." She hung up and turned to Emma with a serious expression. "That was a woman named Sarah Marshall. She says she's Hero's owner and is coming to collect him tomorrow morning." Emma felt her heart sink. Did she explain anything? About the kitten, the note? Dr. Levine shook her head. She seemed surprised about those details. Said she needed to talk to us in person. The veterinarian paused, studying Hero thoughtfully. "There's more to this story, Emma. Much more." As Emma leashed Hero and gathered Pocket for the journey home, she couldn't shake a growing sense of unease. Tomorrow would bring answers, but she wasn't sure she was ready for them. In just over 24 hours, these two animals had worked their way into her heart, and the thought of losing them, especially under mysterious circumstances, was more painful than she wanted to admit. Emma hardly slept that night, her mind racing with questions about Hero's mysterious owner. She'd searched online for Sarah Marshall in Lakeside, but found too many possibilities to narrow it down. The kitten woke every few hours for feedings, which gave her ample time to wonder what the morning would bring. Hero remained vigilant throughout the night, always alert when Pocket cried, watching as Emma tended to the tiny creature with the same intense focus he'd shown since their first meeting. By the time her alarm went off, Emma had made a decision. If this Sarah Marshall couldn't provide satisfactory answers about the note and the kitten, she would fight to keep Hero. She had no legal grounds, of course, but something felt deeply wrong about the situation. Who lets their dog wander 40 miles away? Why would a child entrust their kitten to a dog unless they were desperate? "We'll figure this out," she promised Hero as she got ready for work. The dog watched her with those intelligent eyes that seemed to understand far more than they should. Emma arrived at the clinic early, Hero walking perfectly beside her, and Pocket securely nestled in his carrier. Dr. Levine was already there, reviewing the day's appointments. "You look like you didn't sleep," the veterinarian observed, pouring Emma a cup of coffee from the break room pot. "Too many questions," Emma admitted, accepting the mug gratefully. "I just can't make sense of it all." "Well, we should have some answers soon." Dr. Levine checked her watch. "Ms. Marshall said she'd be here at 10. That gives us about 2 hours to prepare." The clinic opened at 8, and the first appointments kept them busy enough to distract Emma temporarily from her worries. Hero remained in the break room, becoming something of a mascot for the staff. Everyone who met him commented on his unusual intelligence and dignified demeanor. At precisely 10 o'clock, the front door chimed, and the receptionist called back, "Dr. Levine, there's a Ms. Marshall here about the found dog." Emma's heart raced as she followed Dr. Levine to the reception area. Standing there was a woman in her mid-30s, dressed in jeans and a simple blouse, her brown hair pulled back in a practical ponytail. She looked tired, with dark circles under her eyes and a tension in her shoulders that spoke of prolonged stress. "Ms. Marshall, I'm Dr. Levine, and this is my assistant, Emma Bennett, who found Hero." Sarah Marshall's eyes widened at the mention of the dog's name. "You know his name? It was on the microchip." Dr. Levine nodded. "Yes, along with your phone number, though no address or other contact information." Sarah seemed to consider this, then asked, "May I see him, please?" Emma led them to the break room where Hero was lying on a blanket. The moment the door opened, he was on his feet, his attention locked on Sarah Marshall. The woman froze in the doorway, her face a complex mixture of relief, confusion, and something that looked strangely like fear. "Hero," she said softly, kneeling down. The dog approached her cautiously, sniffing her extended hand. After a moment, he allowed her to pet his head, but his behavior was nothing like the joyous reunion Emma would have expected from a dog seeing his owner after days apart. "He seems to recognize you," Dr. Levine observed, "but he's remarkably reserved." Sarah nodded slowly. "He would be. Our relationship is complicated." She looked up at the two women. "I think we should talk privately about this." They moved to Dr. Levine's office, bringing Hero with them. Emma insisted on carrying Pocket too, unwilling to leave the kitten alone. Once the door was closed, Sarah Marshall took a deep breath. "First, I should clarify. Hero isn't exactly my dog. He belongs to my brother Richard. Or rather, he belonged to Richard's family." "Belonged?" Emma caught the past tense immediately. "My brother and his wife died in a car accident 3 months ago," Sarah said, her voice steady but with an undercurrent of pain. "They left behind their son Jason, who's 8, and Hero. I've been trying to sort out guardianship of Jason, dealing with social services, my brother's house. It's been overwhelming." "I'm very sorry for your loss," Dr. Levine said gently. "But that doesn't explain how Hero ended up 40 miles away with a kitten and a note." Sarah looked down at her hands. "Jason has been staying with me in Lakeside while the legal issues get sorted out. He's having a hard time, as you can imagine. About 2 weeks ago, he found a stray kitten near my apartment complex. He begged to keep it, but my lease doesn't allow pets. I was already risking eviction by having Hero temporarily." Emma glanced at the dog, who was sitting attentively, watching Sarah as if evaluating every word. "So the note was from Jason? Daddy says we can't keep him anymore?" Sarah winced. "That's the part I don't understand. Jason's father, my brother, is gone. He couldn't have said anything about the kitten." She looked genuinely puzzled. "May I see this note?" Emma retrieved the backpack from the storage locker where she'd kept it, handing the plastic-wrapped note to Sarah. The woman read it, her brow furrowed in confusion. "This is Jason's handwriting in his backpack, but this doesn't make sense. Daddy says we can't keep him anymore. And why would he send Hero away? That dog is the only connection he has left to his parents." "Could Jason have run away?" Dr. Levine suggested gently. "Perhaps come to Maplewood for some reason, bringing Hero and the kitten with him?" Sarah's face paled. I don't think so. He was at school yesterday and at home last night. At least I thought he was." Her hands began to tremble. "I work evening shifts at the hospital. The neighbor checks on him, but she wouldn't notice if he slipped out after she left. Oh God, what if he's missing?" Emma exchanged a worried glance with Dr. Levine. This was taking a turn neither of them had expected. "Maybe you should call your neighbor right now. Check if Jason is at school today." Sarah nodded frantically, pulling out her phone. She stepped into the hallway to make the call, leaving Emma and Dr. Levine alone with Hero and Pocket. "What do you make of this?" Emma whispered. "I'm not sure," Dr. Levine replied, her expression troubled. "But I don't think Ms. Marshall is being entirely forthcoming." Hero moved to stand next to Emma, pressing against her leg in a way that felt protective. She stroked his head absently, trying to piece together the puzzle. If Jason was still at home in Lakeside, how did Hero end up in Maplewood with the kitten and note? And why would Jason write about his deceased father in the present tense? Sarah returned, her face ashen. "Jason didn't show up for school today. The neighbor saw him last night around 9, but not this morning." Her voice shook. "I need to go back to Lakeside right away. Contact the police." "Of course," Dr. Levine agreed. But what about Hero and the kitten? Sarah hesitated, looking at the dog. I should take Hero back. Jason will want to see him when we find him. Her voice broke slightly on the last words. Emma felt Hero press more firmly against her leg. Ms. Marshall, no offense, but something doesn't add up here. The note says Daddy says we can't keep him anymore, but you say Jason's father passed away months ago, and now Jason is missing. Sarah's expression hardened slightly. I don't know what's going on either, Ms. Bennett, but Hero is legally my responsibility until Jason's guardianship is settled, and I need to take him back to Lakeside. Dr. Levine stepped in, her tone professional but firm. Ms. Marshall, under the circumstances, I think it would be best if Hero remained here temporarily, at least until Jason is found. The dog might be able to help locate the boy, and moving him back and forth could complicate matters. I don't have time to argue about this, Sarah said, checking her watch anxiously. My nephew is missing. I need to get back to Lakeside immediately. Then let me come with you, Emma said suddenly, surprising even herself. I'll bring Hero. If Jason is missing, having his dog might help find him. Sarah stared at Emma, clearly caught off guard by the offer. You would do that? Come all the way to Lakeside? Emma is our resident dog whisperer, Dr. Levine said smoothly, and she's already formed a bond with Hero. It makes sense. After a moment of hesitation, Sarah nodded. All right, but we need to leave now. What about Pocket? Emma asked, gesturing to the kitten carrier. Bring him too, Dr. Levine suggested. If this kitten is important to Jason, it might help to have both animals. Within 15 minutes, Emma had arranged to take the rest of the day off. She packed supplies for Pocket, secured Hero's newly acquired proper leash, and sent a quick text to her neighbor asking them to check on Milo. Then she found herself sitting in the passenger seat of Sarah Marshall's sedan, Hero in the back seat with Pocket's carrier beside him, heading north toward Lakeside. The first 20 minutes of the drive passed in tense silence. Emma studied Sarah's profile, noting the worry lines around her eyes and the way her knuckles whitened as she gripped the steering wheel. There were so many questions Emma wanted to ask, but she sensed now wasn't the time. Finally, Sarah spoke. I'm sorry for being abrupt back there. Jason is all I have left of my brother. The thought of losing him too. I understand, Emma said softly. How has he been coping? Since the accident? Sarah's expression softened slightly. As well as can be expected. Some days are better than others. Hero has been his rock, that's why I can't understand why he would send the dog away. Emma glanced back at Hero, who was watching the passing landscape through the window, alert as ever. The note doesn't make sense in other ways, too. Why would Jason mention his father as if he were still alive? Sarah's hands tightened on the wheel again. I don't know. Jason has had some confusion. Sometimes he talks about Richard as if he's still there. The therapist says it's a coping mechanism. That might explain it, Emma conceded, though something still felt off. And Hero? How did he end up 40 miles away? Jason must have somehow sent him, Sarah replied, her tone suggesting she found it as bewildering as Emma did. But how an 8-year-old managed that, I have no idea. As they continued north toward Lakeside, Emma couldn't shake the feeling that she was missing something important. She turned to look at Hero again, finding those intelligent eyes already watching her. In them, she saw something that looked remarkably like concern, not just for the missing Jason, but for her. Lakeside was a picturesque town, nestled against the shores of Lake Monroe, its small downtown lined with quaint shops and cafes that catered to weekend tourists and the modest population of year-round residents. Under different circumstances, Emma might have enjoyed the scenic drive as they wound through forested hills before descending into the valley where the town lay spread out beside the glittering water. But the tension in the car kept her focused on more pressing matters. Sarah had called the local police during the drive, reporting Jason missing with a voice that wavered between clinical detachment and barely controlled panic. They were expected at the police station as soon as they arrived. "We'll go straight there," Sarah said, navigating the unfamiliar streets with practiced efficiency. "They'll want to talk to us before starting an official search." Emma nodded, stealing another glance at Hero in the back seat. The dog had been unusually quiet during the journey, his attention divided between watching the road ahead and checking on Pocket, who had mercifully slept through most of the drive. The Lakeside Police Department was housed in a red brick building that looked more like a library than a station. As they pulled into the parking lot, Emma noticed Sarah's hands trembling as she turned off the engine. "It'll be okay," Emma offered, unsure if the reassurance was warranted, but feeling compelled to offer some comfort. "We'll find him." Sarah gave her a tight smile that didn't reach her eyes. "I hope you're right." Inside, they were quickly ushered to a small conference room where a detective named Martinez was waiting for them. He was a compact man with kind eyes and a no-nonsense demeanor, and he got straight to business. "Ms. Marshall, we've already sent officers to your apartment and have notified Jason's school to contact us if he shows up there. Now I need you to tell me everything that might help us locate him." Sarah recounted the previous evening, how she'd left for her shift at the hospital around 6 p.m., how the neighbor, Mrs. Grayson, had checked on Jason at 9 p.m. and reported he was in his bedroom reading. Sarah had returned home around midnight and peeked in on what she thought was her sleeping nephew. "But this morning when I went to wake him for school, his bed was empty. I thought maybe he'd gotten up early, but he wasn't in the apartment. I had to leave for work, so I asked Mrs. Grayson to make sure he got on the school bus." Sarah's voice broke slightly. "When the school called to say he wasn't there, I didn't know what to think." "And then you received the call about the dog," Detective Martinez said, glancing at Hero, who sat alertly beside Emma's chair. "Yes, it didn't make sense. Hero was in the apartment when I left for work this morning." Sarah's brow furrowed. "At least I thought he was. I didn't specifically check, but I would have noticed if he wasn't there." The detective made notes, then turned to Emma. "And you found the dog last night in Maplewood?" "Yes, around 11 p.m. in Oak Ridge Park. He was carrying a backpack with a kitten inside." Emma retrieved the note from her pocket, now sealed in an evidence bag that Dr. Levine had provided. This was with them. Martinez read the note, his expression thoughtful. "Daddy says we can't keep him anymore. Ms. Marshall, your brother, Jason's father, passed away 3 months ago, correct?" Sarah nodded, her eyes downcast. "Jason sometimes talks about Richard as if he's still here. His therapist says it's part of his grief process." "I see." The detective studied the note again. "And the kitten? Was it a recent addition to your household?" "Jason found it about 2 weeks ago. I told him we couldn't keep it because of my lease, but I was trying to find someone to adopt it." Sarah glanced at the carrier where Pocket slept. "I don't understand how it ended up with Hero in Maplewood." Detective Martinez tapped his pen against his notepad. "What I find most perplexing is how an 8-year-old boy managed to send a dog 40 miles away with a kitten. Did Jason know anyone in Maplewood? Family? Friends?" Sarah shook her head. "Not that I'm aware of. My brother's family lived here in Lakeside before the accident. Jason's been with me ever since." "The note suggests he wanted the kitten to be found and cared for," Emma interjected, "like he was rescuing it from something." "Or someone," Martinez added, his expression grave. "Ms. Marshall, I need to ask, has Jason shown any signs of fear or unusual behavior recently? Any indication that he might be afraid of someone?" Sarah stiffened. "What are you suggesting, Detective?" "Just exploring all possibilities. Children who run away are often running from something, not just to something. Emma watched Sarah's reaction carefully. The woman's discomfort was evident, but was it from indignation or something else? Jason has been grieving, Sarah said firmly. He's had nightmares, mood swings, all normal according to his therapist. But he's not afraid of me, if that's what you're implying. No one is implying anything, Ms. Marshall, Martinez said soothingly. We're just trying to understand the situation. Now I'd like to see Jason's room if that's possible. 20 minutes later, they pulled up to a modest apartment complex on the east side of town. Birchwood Apartments was a 2-story building with exterior walkways and small balconies facing a central courtyard. Sarah led them up to Unit 214 on the 2nd floor, where a uniformed officer was already waiting. Nothing disturbed since this morning, the officer reported. No signs of forced entry or struggle. The apartment was small but neat. A combined living and dining area, a galley kitchen, and a short hallway leading to what Emma presumed were the bedrooms. Signs of a child's presence were minimal in the main living space. A backpack by the door, not the one Hero had carried, Emma noted. A jacket on a hook that was too small for an adult. A few action figures on a shelf. Jason's room is this way, Sarah said, leading them down the hallway to a door decorated with a hand-drawn sign. Jason's lab, experiments in progress. The bedroom beyond was more revealing of its occupant. Space-themed wallpaper covered one wall, while the others were adorned with drawings and posters of planets and stars. A twin bed with rumpled sheets stood against one wall, a desk cluttered with books and papers against another. A bookshelf overflowed with science books, comics, and various small collections, rocks, seashells, toy cars. Detective Martinez began a methodical examination of the room, opening drawers and checking under the bed while Sarah stood in the doorway, arms crossed as if physically holding herself together. Emma noticed Hero's behavior change as soon as they entered the apartment. The dog moved with purpose, nose to the ground, tracing a path that led from the front door to Jason's room. Now he stood in the center of the bedroom, turning in slow circles as if processing the scents around him. "Does anything seem to be missing?" Martinez asked Sarah. "Clothes, favorite toys, things a child might take if they were running away?" Sarah scanned the room, frowning. "His backpack, the blue one with superhero patches, that's missing. And maybe some clothes. It's hard to tell without checking his drawers." While Sarah and the detective continued their inventory, Emma knelt beside Hero, who had stopped his circling and was now staring intently at the bed. Following his gaze, Emma noticed something glinting beneath the frame. She reached under and pulled out a small metal object, a key on a rocket-shaped keychain. "Did you find something?" Detective Martinez asked, noticing her movement. Emma held up the key. "It was under the bed. Does this belong to Jason?" Sarah stepped forward, taking the key from Emma's palm. "Yes, it's the key to my brother's house. I gave it to Jason as a keepsake, but he's not supposed to." Her voice trailed off as she stared at the key. "Your brother's house?" Martinez asked. "Is it vacant?" "Yes, it's still in probate. Richard and Lisa, his wife, didn't have a will, so the legal issues are complicated. The house has been sitting empty while the courts decide what happens to it." Sarah's face had gone pale. "You don't think Jason would go there, do you? It's on the other side of town." "It's worth checking," Martinez said, already moving toward the door. "Is there a spare key?" Sarah nodded. "In my bedroom, in the dresser drawer." As Sarah went to retrieve the spare key, Emma found herself alone briefly with Hero in Jason's room. The dog was still focused on the spot where the key had been found, his nose working as if trying to extract every possible scent. "What are you telling me, Hero?" Emma whispered, kneeling beside him. "Is Jason at his father's house?" Hero turned to look at her, and for a moment Emma could have sworn she saw an affirmative response in those intelligent eyes. Then the dog moved to the window, placing his front paws on the sill to look out at the courtyard below. Following his gaze, Emma noticed something she hadn't before: the fire escape. It ran right past Jason's window, providing easy access to both the courtyard and the street beyond. "The fire escape," she murmured, just as Sarah returned with the key. "We're ready to go," Detective Martinez announced. "Ms. Marshall, you'll ride with me. Ms. Bennett, can you follow in Ms. Marshall's car? We may need to split up if Jason isn't at the house." Minutes later, they were on their way across town, Emma following the police cruiser with Hero and Pocket in the back seat. As she drove, Emma found herself talking to the dog as if he could understand every word. "You know where he is, don't you? That's why you were sent to Maplewood, to get help." The absurdity of the conversation struck her, but something about Hero's demeanor made it feel perfectly natural. "But why send you so far away? Why not just to a neighbor or the police?" Hero made no response, of course, but his focus never wavered from the road ahead, as if he knew exactly where they were going and what they would find when they arrived. The Marshall family home was a modest single-story ranch house on a quiet street lined with similar homes. A "for sale" sign had been placed in the yard, though the grass was overgrown, suggesting no one had been maintaining the property. Detective Martinez parked at the curb and Emma pulled in behind him. As soon as she opened the car door, Hero was out like a shot, heading straight for the front door of the house, where he stood waiting, looking back at them expectantly. "He seems certain," Martinez observed as they approached. Sarah unlocked the front door with trembling hands. The house beyond was dark and still, the air inside stale from months of being closed up. Furniture was draped with sheets, and dust motes danced in the beams of light that cut through the closed blinds. "Jason," Sarah called, her voice echoing in the emptiness. "Jason, honey, are you here? It's Aunt Sarah." No answer came, but Hero was already moving, heading down a hallway with determined steps. The others followed, Martinez with his hand near his weapon, Sarah clutching her arms around herself as if warding off a chill, Emma bringing up the rear with Pocket's carrier. Hero stopped at a closed door, pawing at it insistently. Martinez stepped forward, turning the knob carefully. The door swung open to reveal what had clearly been Jason's bedroom in his former home. Unlike the rest of the house, this room showed signs of recent disturbance. The sheet had been removed from the bed and a small reading lamp was on, casting a warm glow over the space. But the room was empty. "He's been here," Martinez said, examining the disturbed bedding and the still warm lamp. "Recently." Sarah rushed in, looking frantically around the room as if Jason might be hiding in a corner. "Jason? Honey, please come out if you're here. You're not in trouble." Hero, however, wasn't showing any signs of disappointment. Instead, he moved purposefully to the closet door, scratching at it with increasing urgency. Martinez approached cautiously, motioning for Sarah to step back. He drew his weapon, a precaution that made Emma's heart race, and pulled the closet door open in one swift motion. No one was inside, but Hero immediately pushed past the detective and began pawing at the back wall of the closet. Martinez shone his flashlight where the dog indicated, revealing what appeared to be a small access panel. "What's that?" Emma asked, stepping closer. "Crawl space access," Martinez answered, holstering his weapon and kneeling to examine the panel. "These older ranch homes often have them for maintenance." He turned to Sarah. "Did you know about this?" Sarah shook her head, her face pale. I've never even been in this closet. After the accident, I couldn't bear to go through their things." Martinez carefully removed the panel, revealing a dark opening beyond. He shone his flashlight into the space, which appeared to be a narrow passage between the walls. "Jason," he called. "Jason Marshall? This is Detective Martinez from the Lakeside Police. If you're in there, please come out. You're not in any trouble, son." Silence answered him, but Hero was growing increasingly agitated, whining and pawing at the opening. Martinez looked at the dog thoughtfully, then at the narrow passage. "I'm not going to fit in there," he said, "and I'm not sending a civilian in without knowing what's on the other side." He pulled out his radio. "This is Martinez. I need backup at 1247 Pine Street. Possible missing child situation. I need officers for a thorough search of the property, including crawl spaces and between-wall access points." While they waited for backup to arrive, Emma set Pocket's carrier down and knelt beside Hero, who was still fixated on the crawl space. "What is it, boy? Is Jason in there?" Hero looked at her with those intelligent eyes, then back at the opening, whining softly. It wasn't fear in his demeanor, Emma realized, but urgency, as if time were running out. "Detective," she said suddenly, "I think we need to go in now. Hero's trying to tell us something's wrong." Martinez looked skeptical. "Ms. Bennett, I understand your concern, but I can't authorize—" "I'll go," Sarah interrupted, already moving toward the closet. "I'm small enough and he's my nephew." "Ms. Marshall, I strongly advise against—" But Sarah was already on her hands and knees, crawling into the narrow opening. Hero barked once, as if in approval, then tried to follow her. Martinez blocked the dog with his arm. "No, boy. Let's let her check first." Emma watched anxiously as Sarah disappeared into the darkness, Martinez's flashlight providing the only illumination. For a long minute, there was nothing but the sound of Sarah moving through the confined space, then a muffled cry echoed back to them. "Jason! Oh my God, Jason!" Martinez immediately released Hero, who shot into the crawl space without hesitation. Emma found herself holding her breath, straining to hear what was happening. There were more muffled voices, then Sarah's panicked cry. "He's not breathing right. Detective, call an ambulance." Martinez was already on his radio, calling for emergency medical assistance as he struggled to see into the cramped space. "What's happening in there, Ms. Marshall?" "He's unconscious," Sarah's voice came back, thick with tears. "He's burning up with fever. Please, we need to get him out." The next several minutes were a blur of activity. Martinez, refusing to wait for backup, squeezed himself partway into the opening, reaching to help guide Sarah as she carefully maneuvered Jason's limp form toward the entrance. Hero had somehow circled around behind them and was helping to nudge the boy forward, his intelligence once again defying normal canine behavior. Finally, they managed to extract Jason from the crawl space. The boy was pale and frighteningly still, his face flushed with fever. He couldn't have been more than 8, small for his age, with a mop of dark hair that reminded Emma of Hero's coloring. Martinez immediately checked for vital signs. "He's breathing, but his pulse is rapid. The ambulance is on its way." Sarah cradled her nephew in her arms, tears streaming down her face. "Jason, honey, wake up. Please wake up." Emma hung back, feeling like an intruder on this family crisis. Hero, however, had no such hesitation. He moved to Jason's side, gently licking the boy's hand and whining softly. The dog's distress was palpable, his entire body vibrating with concern. Pocket chose that moment to wake up, mewling plaintively from his carrier. The sound seemed to penetrate Jason's unconscious state. His eyelids fluttered, and he turned his head slightly toward the noise. "Smokey," he whispered, his voice barely audible. "The kitten's here, honey," Sarah assured him, stroking his hair. "And Hero, too. They're both safe." Jason's eyes opened slightly, unfocused and glazed with fever. Did Hero find someone good? For Smokey? Emma stepped forward, kneeling beside the boy. "He did. He brought Smokey to me. I'm taking good care of him, I promise." A ghost of a smile touched Jason's lips before his eyes closed again. Martinez checked his pulse once more, his expression grave. "Where is that ambulance?" he muttered, checking his watch. As if in answer, sirens wailed in the distance, growing steadily closer. Within minutes, paramedics were rushing into the house, equipment in hand. They quickly assessed Jason, setting up an IV and placing an oxygen mask over his face. Severe dehydration and high fever, one of the paramedics reported. How long has he been missing? Since sometime last night, as far as we know, Martinez answered. And he was in a crawl space? In this weather? The paramedic shook his head. He's lucky you found him when you did. Another few hours. He didn't need to finish the thought. As they prepared to transport Jason to the hospital, Emma found herself wondering how the boy had ended up in such a state. Had he run away and hidden in his old home, only to fall ill? Or had he been sick before he disappeared? And what about the mysterious note and Hero's incredible journey to Maplewood? I'll follow the ambulance, Sarah told Martinez, her face drawn with worry. Can you secure the house? Of course, I'll join you at the hospital as soon as backup arrives. The detective turned to Emma. Ms. Bennett, thank you for your assistance. You and the dog can head back to Maplewood now if you'd like. Actually, Emma said, making a split-second decision, I'd like to come to the hospital too, if that's okay. I'm concerned about Jason and... She glanced at Hero, who was watching the paramedics work with unwavering attention. I think Hero should be there when he wakes up. Martinez nodded understandingly. That makes sense. The boy clearly has a bond with the dog. As the paramedics wheeled Jason out on a stretcher, Hero tried to follow, whining anxiously when Emma held him back. It's okay, boy. We'll see him at the hospital, she soothed, though she wasn't entirely sure they would allow a dog inside. She would cross that bridge when they came to it. With Jason safely in the ambulance and Sarah following close behind in her car, Emma found herself alone with Martinez, Hero, and Pocket in the Marshall family home. The detective was examining the crawl space more thoroughly now, shining his flashlight into its depths. I don't understand, he muttered. Why would the boy hide in there? And how did he get so sick so quickly? Hero had returned to the closet, sniffing around the entrance to the crawl space as if searching for something. Emma watched him, a thought forming in her mind. Detective, is it possible that Jason wasn't hiding? That maybe he was put in there? Martinez turned to her, his expression serious. What makes you say that? The note, Emma explained. Daddy says we can't keep him anymore. We've been assuming it referred to the kitten, but what if it meant something else? And Jason told Hero to find someone good for Smokey, not for himself. You think the boy was in danger? Martinez's voice was low, his eyes darting to the doorway where Sarah had been standing earlier. From whom? Emma hesitated, not wanting to voice her suspicions without more evidence. I don't know, but something feels wrong about this whole situation. Before Martinez could respond, Hero barked sharply, drawing their attention. He had moved to a corner of the room and was pawing at a floorboard that appeared slightly raised. Martinez approached cautiously, kneeling to examine the spot. Loose board, he murmured, carefully prying it up with his pocket knife. Beneath it was a small space containing a child's treasure box, a metal container decorated with spacecraft stickers. Martinez lifted it out, setting it on the bed before carefully opening it. Inside was a jumble of childish treasures, polished rocks, baseball cards, a few action figures. But nestled among them was a folded piece of paper. Martinez extracted it carefully, unfolding what appeared to be a letter written in the same childish scrawl as the note in the backpack. Dear Hero, Martinez read aloud, if you find this, I need your help. Aunt Sarah's boyfriend, Brad, is mean. He hurt me when I wouldn't give him Dad's special watch. He said if I tell anyone, he'll hurt you and Smokey too. Please take Smokey somewhere safe. I'm going to hide in our secret place that Dad showed me. I'm scared. Love, Jason. Emma felt a chill run down her spine. Brad? Sarah never mentioned a boyfriend. No, she didn't, Martinez said grimly. already reaching for his radio, and she followed that ambulance alone. Hero growled low in his throat, as if he understood the implications perfectly. The sound made Emma's skin prickle with fear. If Sarah's boyfriend had been abusing Jason, and if he was at the hospital now. Martinez was already rushing toward the door, radio in hand. "All units, this is Detective Martinez. I need an officer at Lakeside Memorial Hospital immediately. Potential threat to a minor, Jason Marshall, just brought in by ambulance. Suspect may be with the boy's aunt, Sarah Marshall, or arriving separately. Name, Brad. No last name yet. Consider suspect dangerous." Emma scrambled to keep up, gathering Pocket's carrier while Hero was already at the detective's heels. "What can I do?" she asked, her heart hammering in her chest. "Stay here until backup arrives," Martinez instructed, his expression grim. "I'll handle this." "No," Emma said firmly, surprising herself with her own vehemence. "Hero needs to be there. Jason needs him, and I'm not letting that dog out of my sight." Martinez hesitated, clearly torn between protocol and practicality. Hero settled the debate by barking sharply and heading for the front door, his entire demeanor radiating urgency. "Fine," the detective conceded, "but you stay in the car until I give the all clear, and keep that dog under control." Minutes later, they were speeding toward Lakeside Memorial, Martinez's police cruiser cutting through traffic with sirens wailing. Emma sat in the passenger seat, Hero and Pocket in the back, her mind racing with questions and fears. Who was this Brad? How long had the abuse been going on? And most disturbing of all, was Sarah complicit, or was she another victim? "I should have seen it," Martinez muttered, his knuckles white on the steering wheel. The way she was acting, her inconsistent story, I was so focused on finding the boy I missed the signs. "We all did," Emma said, though it was cold comfort. "Even I didn't suspect anything until we found that note." "Hero knew," Martinez said, glancing in the rearview mirror at the dog. "That's why he went all the way to Maplewood, isn't it? The boy sent him away to protect him, and he found you, someone who could help." Emma turned to look at Hero, who met her gaze with those intelligent eyes that seemed to understand everything. "But how did Jason know to send him to Maplewood? How did Hero know to find me specifically?" "Some questions don't have logical answers," Martinez said, swerving around a slow-moving truck. "Right now, I'm just grateful the dog is smarter than most people I know." Lakeside Memorial Hospital came into view, a modern 4-story building set back from the road, its emergency entrance marked by bright red signs. Martinez pulled up to the ambulance bay, ignoring the no parking signs. "Stay here," he ordered, drawing his weapon and checking it discreetly. "If I'm not back in 5 minutes, call dispatch and ask for Officer Ramirez. He's already en route." Emma nodded, her throat too dry for words. As Martinez disappeared through the sliding doors, she turned to Hero. "What do we do, boy? How do we help Jason?" Hero whined softly, pressing his nose against the window, his entire body tense with the need to act. In the carrier, Pocket mewed plaintively, as if sensing the urgency of the situation. The seconds ticked by, each feeling like an eternity. 2 minutes. 3. Emma found herself checking her phone repeatedly, watching the time crawl forward. 4 minutes. Her hand hovered over the phone, ready to call dispatch as instructed. Then Hero began to bark, not the sharp alert from before, but a frantic, desperate sound that Emma had never heard from him. He was scrambling at the door, trying to get out, his eyes fixed on something Emma couldn't see from her angle. She twisted in her seat, following his gaze to a side entrance of the hospital. There, emerging from a door marked "Staff Only," was Sarah Marshall, and she wasn't alone. A tall man with close-cropped hair had his hand firmly around her upper arm, guiding her toward a black SUV parked illegally near the service entrance. Sarah's face was a mask of terror, her body language screaming coercion even from a distance. Emma's blood ran cold. Brad. It had to be. And if he was forcing Sarah to leave, what about Jason? Was the boy still inside, vulnerable and alone? Making a split-second decision, Emma grabbed her phone and snapped several quick photos of the man in the SUV, including its license plate. Then she dialed 911. "Emergency. What's your location?" the dispatcher answered. "Lakeside Memorial Hospital," Emma said hurriedly. "Detective Martinez is inside looking for a suspect named Brad who may be threatening a child. I can see the suspect right now at the East Service entrance, forcing a woman into a black SUV. Martinez needs to know immediately." "Stay on the line, ma'am. I'm dispatching officers to your location and will relay the information to Detective Martinez." Emma watched helplessly as Brad shoved Sarah into the SUV's passenger seat. He was scanning the area as he rounded the vehicle to the driver's side, his movements controlled but hurried. Hero was still barking frantically, drawing attention from hospital staff who had stepped outside to investigate the commotion. Brad noticed too, his head snapping in their direction. For a brief, terrifying moment, his eyes locked with Emma's through the car window. His expression hardened, recognition and rage flashing across his face. "He's seen me," Emma told the dispatcher, her voice shaking. "He knows I've identified him." "Are you in a secure location, ma'am?" "I'm in Detective Martinez's police cruiser, but—" Emma broke off as Brad suddenly abandoned the SUV and began striding purposefully toward them, his hand reaching beneath his jacket. "He's coming this way. I think he has a weapon." "Ms. Bennett, lock the doors and stay down. Officers are 2 minutes out." Emma fumbled for the door locks, but Hero had other ideas. The dog lunged across the seat, pressing his weight against the driver's side door, just as Brad reached for the handle. The door swung open, and Hero burst out like a black and tan missile, teeth bared and hackles raised. Brad stumbled backward, surprised by the dog's sudden appearance. His hand emerged from his jacket holding a pistol, but Hero was already airborne, a snarling mass of fur and muscle that slammed into the man's chest, sending them both crashing to the pavement. The gun skittered away across the asphalt as Hero pinned Brad down, teeth bared inches from his throat. The man froze, genuine fear replacing the rage in his eyes. "Call him off," Brad yelled, his voice tight with panic. "Call this fucking dog off." Emma had scrambled out of the car, keeping low as the dispatcher had instructed, but she made no move to restrain Hero. "Where's Jason?" she demanded. "What did you do to him?" Brad's eyes darted between Emma and the growling dog. "I didn't do anything to the brat. He ran away. Sarah, tell them." Emma glanced toward the SUV, where Sarah Marshall sat frozen in the passenger seat, her face streaked with tears. The woman made no move to help Brad or to escape herself. "Sarah," Emma called, "is Jason still in the hospital? Is he safe?" Before Sarah could answer, the hospital doors burst open, and Detective Martinez emerged at a run, weapon drawn. 2 uniformed officers followed close behind, quickly taking in the scene. "Brad Thompson," Martinez announced, approaching cautiously. "You're under arrest for assault, child endangerment, and whatever else I can think of on the way to the station." He glanced at Hero, who maintained his position, keeping Brad effectively pinned. "Ms. Bennett, I believe your dog has the situation well in hand, but perhaps you could call him off so we can cuff the suspect?" Emma hesitated, unsure if Hero would obey her in this situation. "Hero," she called softly, "it's okay now. Come." To her surprise and relief, Hero immediately backed away from Brad, though his eyes never left the man, and a low growl continued to rumble from his chest. The officers moved in quickly, flipping Brad onto his stomach and securing his hands behind his back. "Where's Jason?" Emma asked Martinez urgently. "Is he okay?" "He's inside under guard," the detective assured her. He regained consciousness in the ambulance and managed to tell the paramedics enough that they called us. That's why I went in alone. I knew what to look for. Sarah Marshall had finally emerged from the SUV, her movements tentative like someone expecting to be struck. "I didn't know," she whispered as Martinez approached her. "I swear I didn't know he was hurting Jason. He threatened me too. Said he'd kill me if I told anyone about the watch." "What watch?" Martinez asked, though his tone suggested he already knew. "Richard's Rolex," Sarah said, her voice breaking. "It was worth thousands. Brad found out about it when I was going through Richard's belongings. He's been pressuring me to find it, but I didn't know where it was. I didn't know Jason had hidden it." Martinez regarded her with a mixture of pity and professional skepticism. "We'll sort all this out at the station, Ms. Marshall. Right now, let's focus on Jason." As the officers led Brad away, still spitting threats and curses, Emma knelt beside Hero, wrapping her arms around the dog's sturdy neck. "You're amazing," she whispered into his fur. "You saved that boy twice now." Hero licked her cheek once, then turned his attention to the hospital entrance, whining softly. The message was clear. He wanted to see Jason. "Detective," Emma called, "can Hero come inside? I think it would mean a lot to Jason to see him." Martinez, who was still questioning Sarah, looked over at them thoughtfully. "Normally no, but this isn't exactly a normal situation. Let me clear it with the staff." 10 minutes and several conversations later, Emma found herself walking through the pediatric ward of Lakeside Memorial, Hero padding silently beside her, his behavior so impeccable that even the initially reluctant hospital administrators had relented. Pocket remained in his carrier, which Emma carried carefully, knowing the kitten was an important part of this strange, convoluted story. Outside a room guarded by a uniformed officer, Martinez waited for them. "He's awake," the detective said, his voice softer than Emma had heard it before. "The doctors say he's going to be okay physically. Dehydration, stress, and the beginning of pneumonia from being in that damp crawl space. But he's tough, like someone else I know." He glanced meaningfully at Hero. "Can we see him?" Emma asked. Martinez nodded. "Briefly, he's asking for his dog and something called Smokey. I assume that's the kitten?" Emma nodded, lifting the carrier slightly. "Has he said anything more about what happened?" "Enough to confirm what we suspected. Brad was after the watch, which apparently Jason had hidden in the crawl space of his old home, a place his father had shown him as a secret hideout for games. When Jason refused to tell Brad where it was, things got ugly." Martinez's jaw tightened. "The boy ran away the night before last, not last night as Sarah claimed. He made it to his old house but was already sick from an untreated ear infection that developed into something worse. He sent Hero with the kitten to find help." "But why Maplewood? Why not send him to a neighbor?" Martinez shrugged. "That part's still unclear. But right now, let's just focus on what Jason needs." He pushed the door open gently, revealing a small room dominated by a hospital bed, where a tiny figure lay connected to various monitors and an IV drip. Jason Marshall looked even smaller in the hospital bed than he had in the crawl space, his dark hair a stark contrast against the white pillow. His face lit up when he saw who had entered. "Hero," he called, his voice weak but filled with joy. "You came back." Hero moved to the bed with surprising gentleness, his tail wagging so hard his entire body shook. He placed his front paws delicately on the edge of the mattress, stretching his neck to nuzzle the boy's hand. Jason's smile was like sunrise breaking through clouds, transforming his pale face into something radiant, despite the oxygen tube and monitor wires. "He found you," Jason said, looking at Emma with wonder. "He really did it." Emma approached the bed, setting Pocket's carrier where the boy could see it. "He sure did. And he brought your kitten too. Jason's eyes widened. Smokey's okay? Can I see him? Emma glanced at Martinez, who nodded slightly. She carefully opened the carrier and lifted the tiny gray kitten, placing him gently on the bed beside Jason. Pocket immediately curled up against the boy's side, purring loudly enough for everyone to hear. You saved him, Jason whispered, stroking the kitten with trembling fingers, just like I asked. Actually, Hero saved both of you, Emma said, pulling up a chair beside the bed. He's a very special dog. I know, Jason agreed, looking at Hero with unmistakable love. He was my dad's dog first. Dad said Hero was the smartest dog in the world. Martinez had moved to the foot of the bed, his notebook ready but his expression gentle. Jason, I know you're tired, but can you tell us a little more about what happened? How did Hero know to go to Maplewood? The boy's face clouded slightly, his hand unconsciously moving to scratch behind Hero's ears for comfort. When Brad started getting really mad about the watch, I knew I had to hide Smokey. Brad said he'd hurt him if I didn't tell where the watch was. Emma felt a surge of protective anger. What kind of monster threatens to harm a kitten to manipulate a child? I remembered Dad's stories about the dog shelter in Maplewood, Jason continued. That's where he got Hero as a puppy. Dad always said if anything happened to him, Hero should go back there because they'd find him a good home. The Maplewood Animal Shelter? Emma asked, pieces clicking into place. That's just 2 blocks from where I found Hero in the park. Jason nodded weakly. I wrote the address on a paper and put it in Smokey's backpack. I told Hero to take Smokey there, to find him a safe home. I knew Brad wouldn't let me keep him anyway. Martinez made notes, his expression thoughtful. So you sent Hero away to protect both him and the kitten, but you stayed behind. I was going to run away too, Jason admitted, his voice dropping to a near whisper. But when I went back to get my stuff, Brad was there. He was really angry. He grabbed my arm. The boy's free hand moved unconsciously to his opposite wrist, where Emma now noticed the shadow of bruises. It's okay, Jason, Martinez said gently. You don't have to tell us everything right now. We know you managed to get away and hide at your old house. Dad showed me the crawl space when I was little, Jason said, perking up slightly at the memory. He said it was our secret fort, just for us. Brad didn't know about it. You were very brave, Emma told him, her heart aching for what this child had endured. Jason looked down at Hero, who hadn't moved from his position beside the bed. I was scared Hero wouldn't come back, that something bad would happen to him. But Dad always said Hero was special, that he understood things other dogs don't. Your dad was right, Emma agreed, thinking of Hero's extraordinary behavior over the past 2 days. Hero is the most remarkable dog I've ever met. A nurse appeared in the doorway, her expression a mixture of professional concern and reluctant interruption. I'm sorry, but Jason needs to rest now. Doctor's orders. Martinez nodded, tucking away his notebook. We'll come back later, Jason. Officer Wilson will stay right outside your door, so you're completely safe. Panic flashed across the boy's face. What about Hero and Smokey? They can't leave. The nurse started to explain hospital policy regarding animals, but Martinez cut her off with a subtle gesture. I think we can arrange something special in this case, he said, his tone making it clear this wasn't a request. Officer Wilson is a K9 handler. I'm sure he can supervise a therapy dog and a therapy kitten, don't you think? The nurse hesitated, then relented with a small smile. I suppose we could make an exception, just this once. But the animals will need to be checked by our staff veterinarian first, hospital protocol. Of course, Emma agreed quickly, relieved that Jason wouldn't be separated from his companions. Hero and Pocket are both perfectly healthy, but I understand the precaution. As they prepared to leave Jason to rest, The boy suddenly reached for Emma's hand. "Are you going to take care of Hero and Smokey now?" he asked, his eyes wide with concern. "Aunt Sarah can't have pets in her apartment." Emma exchanged a glance with Martinez, unsure how to respond. The detective stepped in smoothly. "We're figuring all that out, Jason. The most important thing is that you get better. Everything else can wait." Jason seemed satisfied with this answer, settling back against his pillows with Pocket curled beside him and Hero maintaining his vigilant position by the bed. Emma felt a tug at her heart as she followed Martinez into the hallway, leaving the boy with his animal protectors. "What happens now?" she asked once they were out of earshot. "With Jason and Sarah, I mean." Martinez sighed, running a hand through his hair. "That's up to social services at this point. Sarah's been taken in for questioning. Her story about not knowing what Brad was doing to Jason doesn't entirely add up, but it's possible she was a victim too. These situations are rarely black and white. And Jason, he can't go back to that apartment." "No, he can't," Martinez agreed. "He'll likely be placed in temporary foster care once he's released from the hospital, while the courts sort everything out. His parents' estate, including that house, is still in probate, but there might be other relatives who could take custody." Emma nodded, trying to process it all. "What about Hero and the kitten?" Martinez gave her a considering look. "That's a bit more straightforward. Technically, Hero belongs to Jason as part of his parents' estate. The kitten was a stray that Jason found. Neither can go into the foster system with him, at least not immediately. So they need somewhere to stay," Emma said slowly, a plan forming in her mind. "Someone to look after them until Jason's situation is stable." "Are you volunteering, Ms. Bennett?" Martinez asked, though his tone suggested he already knew the answer. "Yes," Emma said without hesitation. "I've already bonded with them both, and I work at an animal clinic. I'm probably the best qualified person to care for them right now." "I had a feeling you'd say that," Martinez said with a slight smile. "I'll speak with social services. They'll need to approve any arrangement, but given the circumstances, I think they'll agree it's in the animal's best interest, and Jason's too, knowing they're being well cared for." Emma felt a wave of relief, followed immediately by a rush of practical concerns. "I'll need to get back to Maplewood soon. I have work tomorrow, and my cat Milo is probably wondering where I am. But I don't want to take Hero and Pocket away while Jason is still here." "Why don't you head back tonight?" Martinez suggested. "Hero and the kitten can stay here with Jason for now. I'll make sure the hospital allows it. Once Jason is discharged and placed in foster care, we can arrange for the animals to join you in Maplewood. It might be a few days." It was a sensible plan, though Emma felt oddly reluctant to leave. In the span of just over 24 hours, she'd become deeply invested in this strange, sad story and its principal characters, especially Hero, whose extraordinary actions had set everything in motion. "I'd like to say goodbye to Jason before I go," she said, "and explain that I'll be taking care of Hero and Pocket temporarily." "Of course," Martinez agreed. "Let's give him an hour to rest first. In the meantime, I need to check in at the station. Would you like to join me? There are a few more questions I'd like to ask about how you found Hero." Emma spent the next several hours at the Lakeside Police Department, providing a detailed statement about her encounter with Hero in the park and everything that had followed. By the time they returned to the hospital, evening was setting in, casting long shadows across the parking lot, where so much drama had unfolded earlier. Jason was awake and looking marginally better when they entered his room. Hero still maintained his position beside the bed, while Pocket had graduated from lying at the boy's side to curled up on his chest, rising and falling with each breath Jason took. "The doctor says I have to stay for a few more days," Jason informed them, his tone suggesting he found this requirement unreasonable. but Officer Wilson let me have his sandwich, and Hero got to go outside with him twice. That's good, Emma said, taking a seat beside the bed. Jason, I need to tell you something. I have to go back to Maplewood tonight. That's where I live and work. But I'm going to come back for Hero and Pocket in a few days when you're feeling better. Jason's face fell slightly. You're taking them away? Just temporarily, Emma assured him quickly. I'll take good care of them until you're settled somewhere new. It won't be forever. Promise? Jason asked, his voice small. I promise, Emma said, meaning it completely, though she had no idea how the situation would actually resolve. And I'll bring them to visit you whenever I can. The boy seemed to consider this, absently stroking Pocket's soft fur. You're the lady Hero was supposed to find, aren't you? The one who works with animals. Emma blinked in surprise. I do work with animals, yes. I'm a veterinary assistant at the Maplewood Animal Clinic. That's why he found you, Jason said with the absolute certainty of a child. He knew you'd help. Emma glanced at Hero, who was watching her with those intelligent eyes that seemed to contain depths no dog should possess. Had he somehow sought her out specifically? The rational part of her brain rejected the idea as impossible, but after everything she'd witnessed, she couldn't dismiss it entirely. I think you're right, she told Jason, reaching out to stroke Hero's head. Hero is a very special dog, and I'll make sure both he and Pocket are well looked after until you can have them back. Jason nodded solemnly. Dad always said Hero was meant for important things. That's why he named him Hero. Emma felt her throat tighten with emotion. Your dad sounds like he was a very wise man. He was, Jason agreed simply. And he would like you. I can tell. As Emma prepared to leave, promising to return as soon as Jason was discharged, she found herself wondering about the boy's father, the man who had trained Hero, who had seen something special in the dog from the beginning. What would he think of all that had transpired, of his dog's remarkable journey to save not just a kitten, but ultimately Jason himself? Hero seemed to understand she was leaving. He left his post by Jason's bed long enough to press against her legs, looking up at her with an expression that seemed to say, I'll watch over him. Come back soon. I will, Emma whispered, kneeling to embrace the dog. Take care of him, Hero. I'll be back before you know it. The drive back to Maplewood felt longer than it had that morning, the highway stretching endlessly before Emma as she navigated Sarah's car through the gathering darkness. Martinez had arranged for her to take the vehicle back, promising to handle the paperwork since Sarah wouldn't be needing it anytime soon. The empty back seat where Hero and Pocket had ridden earlier created a strange void that Emma felt acutely, as if the animal's absence was a physical presence. As she drove, Emma's mind replayed the extraordinary events of the past 36 hours. What had begun as a simple encounter with a dog in the rain had escalated into a complex drama involving abuse, theft, and a child's desperate gambit to save those he loved. At the center of it all was Hero, a dog whose intelligence and actions defied conventional understanding. How did you know, Hero? Emma murmured to the empty car. How did you find me specifically? The coincidence, if it was a coincidence, seemed too perfect. A dog sent to find help at a shelter in Maplewood happens to encounter a veterinary assistant who could provide exactly the care needed. Emma recalled Jason's certainty. That's why he found you. He knew you'd help. It made her wonder about the depths of animal intelligence that humans routinely underestimated. By the time Emma reached her apartment building, it was past 10 o'clock. Exhaustion dragged at her limbs as she climbed the stairs, mentally preparing for Milo's indignant greeting after being left alone for so long. When she opened her door, however, she found not just her cat but also her neighbor, Mrs. Winters, sitting on her couch. Emma! Thank goodness, the older woman exclaimed, rising to her feet. I was getting worried. You've never asked me to check on Milo for more than a day before." "I'm so sorry, Mrs. Winters," Emma said, setting down her bag with a tired sigh. "It's been quite a situation. I should have called to let you know I'd be later than expected." Mrs. Winters waved away the apology. "No need to apologize, dear. Your text mentioned an emergency with a dog and a kitten. Is everything all right?" As Milo wound himself around her ankles in a display of simultaneous affection and reproach, Emma gave her landlady a condensed version of events, omitting the more disturbing details about Brad and Jason's abuse, but explaining that she would likely be fostering Hero and Pocket temporarily. "That poor child," Mrs. Winters murmured when Emma finished. "And what an extraordinary dog. You know, this reminds me of something I read years ago about a dog in Japan who found his way home from hundreds of miles away. Animals have abilities we can barely comprehend." "That's what I keep thinking," Emma agreed, sinking onto the couch beside Milo, who had taken up his rightful place on a cushion. Hero seemed to know exactly what he was doing every step of the way. "When will you bring them home?" Mrs. Winters asked. "In a few days, once Jason is discharged from the hospital. Detective Martinez is arranging for someone to transport them here." Emma hesitated, suddenly remembering a crucial detail. "Actually, there might be a problem with that. My lease only allows one pet, and I'll have 3 temporarily." Mrs. Winters smiled, her kind face crinkling around the eyes. "I think we can make an exception given the circumstances, dear. Just keep the noise down and clean up after them." She patted Emma's hand. "Some rules are meant to be bent when it's for a good cause." After Mrs. Winters left, Emma finally allowed herself to fully relax, the events of the past 2 days catching up to her in a wave of emotional and physical exhaustion. Milo seemed to sense her state, curling up beside her with unusual attentiveness, his warm presence a comfort in the quiet apartment. Tomorrow she would need to return to work, explain the situation to Dr. Levine, and prepare her apartment for 2 new animal residents. But tonight she simply needed rest. Sleep, however, proved elusive. Emma's mind kept returning to Jason, alone in a hospital room except for his faithful companions, to Sarah Marshall, whose role in the whole affair remained ambiguous, and to Hero, whose extraordinary journey had drawn Emma into a situation she could never have anticipated, but now felt deeply invested in. The next morning, Emma arrived at the Maplewood Animal Clinic, armed with coffee and a condensed version of events to share with Dr. Levine. Her boss listened with growing amazement as Emma related the story, her expression shifting from concern to astonishment. "So you'll be fostering the dog and kitten until the boy's situation is resolved?" Dr. Levine asked when Emma finished. "Yes, if that's okay. I may need some flexibility with my schedule for the next few weeks. There will be meetings with social services, and I promise to bring Hero and Pocket to visit Jason regularly." Dr. Levine nodded thoughtfully. "Of course, we can work around that. This is, well, quite remarkable, Emma. I've been a veterinarian for 30 years, and I've never heard anything like it." She paused, her expression growing serious. "But I have to ask, are you prepared for what might happen next? Fostering is temporary by definition. What if Jason can't take the animals back?" The question hit Emma like a physical blow. She had been so focused on the immediate crisis that she hadn't fully contemplated the long-term implications. I don't know," she admitted. "I just knew I had to help them." "That's who you are," Dr. Levine said with a gentle smile. "It's why you're so good at this job. Just be careful with your heart, okay? Getting attached is inevitable, but remember there's a child involved who has already lost too much." The warning was well-intentioned, but Emma knew it was already too late. She was invested in Hero, in Pocket, and most surprisingly, in Jason himself. Something about the boy's courage in the face of adversity, His love for his animal companions and the extraordinary measures he had taken to protect them had touched her deeply. The day passed in a blur of appointments and routine tasks that felt strangely mundane after the drama of the previous days. Emma found herself checking her phone frequently for updates from Detective Martinez, who had promised to keep her informed about Jason's condition and the investigation into Brad Thompson. Around noon, a text arrived. Jason improving. Hero refuses to leave his side. Brad Thompson in custody. No bail. Sarah Marshall cooperating. Claims she was also abused. Will update when more info available. Emma felt a mix of relief and lingering concern. At least Jason was improving and Hero was standing guard. But Sarah's claims raised new questions. Had she truly been another of Brad's victims, or was she trying to mitigate her own culpability? And what would happen to Jason now? After her shift ended, Emma found herself driving to Oak Ridge Park, retracing the path where she had first encountered Hero just 2 nights ago. The rain had long since stopped, leaving the park lush and green in the late afternoon sunlight. She walked to the spot where she had knelt in the rain, reaching out to a soaked and determined dog with a precious cargo. Standing there now, Emma felt a strange sense of destiny. Had it been mere chance that brought Hero to her path? Or was there something more, something beyond rational explanation, that had guided the dog to find her specifically? Emma's phone rang, startling her from her reverie. The caller ID showed an unfamiliar Lakeside number. "Hello?" she answered. "Ms. Bennett, this is Nancy Wilson from Lakeside Social Services. I'm calling about Jason Marshall." Emma's heart rate quickened. "Yes? Is everything okay?" "Jason is doing well physically," the woman assured her. "He's responding to treatment and the doctors expect to discharge him within 48 hours. I'm calling because we need to discuss placement arrangements, and your name has come up repeatedly." "My name?" Emma asked, confused. "Yes. Detective Martinez speaks very highly of you, and Jason has been quite insistent that his dog and kitten need to stay with you. He seems to think you're the only person Hero would accept." Emma smiled at that, picturing Jason's earnest face making this declaration. "Hero is a very special dog," she said, "but I'm not sure how I can help with Jason's placement. I'm not a certified foster parent or anything." "Actually," Nancy Wilson said, her tone shifting slightly, "that's why I'm calling. In reviewing Jason's parents' estate documents, we discovered something unexpected. Richard Marshall had a will after all. It just wasn't filed with the same attorney handling their other affairs. In it, he named a guardian for Jason in case anything happened to both him and his wife." "Oh?" Emma said, sensing this was leading somewhere significant. "That's good news, isn't it? That should simplify things." "Potentially, yes," Nancy agreed. "The guardian named in the will is a woman named Emma Bennett, a veterinary assistant in Maplewood. He describes her as the person who helped me find Hero, and the only person I would trust with what I value most." "Ms. Bennett, is that you?" Emma felt as if the ground had dropped away beneath her feet. She sank onto a nearby park bench, her legs suddenly unable to support her weight. "Ms. Bennett, are you there?" Nancy Wilson's voice sounded distant through the phone. "Yes, I'm here," Emma managed, her mind racing. "But there must be some mistake. I never knew anyone named Richard Marshall. I've never been to Lakeside before yesterday." "The will is quite specific," Nancy replied. "Emma Bennett, veterinary assistant at the Maplewood Animal Clinic. The address listed is your current apartment. There's no mistake." "But I don't understand," Emma said, her voice barely above a whisper. "How could he name me guardian when we never met?" "That's something we're trying to figure out as well," Nancy admitted. "Under normal circumstances, we'd have contacted you immediately upon finding the will, but with everything that's happened with Brad Thompson and Sarah Marshall, things have been complicated." Emma's thoughts whirled chaotically. How could Jason's father have known her, known where she worked and lived, and why would he possibly name her, a stranger, as his son's guardian? There's more, Nancy continued, seemingly sensing Emma's confusion. The will mentions a letter that should be given to you explaining everything. It was supposed to be held by their family attorney, but when we contacted him, he had no knowledge of it. We're still searching for it. This is overwhelming, Emma said honestly. I don't know what to say. I understand this is a shock. Nancy's voice was gentle. You don't need to make any decisions right now. The will creates a legal possibility, not an obligation. But I would like you to meet with me and our team when Jason is discharged. Regardless of the guardianship issue, you'll be taking temporary custody of the animals, and Jason has formed an attachment to you. Of course, Emma agreed, still trying to process the bombshell that had just been dropped on her. I'll be there. After ending the call, Emma remained on the bench, staring unseeing at the park around her. The beautiful spring afternoon continued undisturbed, birds singing, people walking dogs, children playing on distant swings, while her entire understanding of the situation had been upended. A memory suddenly surfaced, Jason saying, "Dad always said Hero was meant for important things." Had Richard Marshall somehow known that his dog would one day find Emma? Had he planned for this somehow? It seemed impossible, and yet... Emma's phone buzzed with a text from Detective Martinez. Just heard from social services. Guess we have more to talk about. Call me when you can. She dialed immediately, desperate for any information that might make sense of this new development. Martinez, he answered on the second ring. Detective, it's Emma Bennett. I just got a call from Nancy Wilson that has me completely confused. She says Richard Marshall named me as Jason's guardian in his will, but I've never met the man in my life. I was just as surprised, Martinez replied. I've been doing some digging since I found out. Did you ever work at the Maplewood Animal Shelter? Emma blinked, surprised by the question. Yes, about 3 years ago. I volunteered there while I was studying to become a veterinary assistant. That might be our connection, Martinez said. According to the records I found, Richard Marshall adopted Hero from that shelter exactly 3 years ago. The paperwork shows he made several visits before finalizing the adoption. Emma's mind raced back to her time at the shelter. She had primarily worked with the dogs, helping socialize them and assist potential adopters in finding the right match. Had she helped Richard Marshall adopt Hero? The name didn't ring any bells, but she had worked with dozens of adopters during her time there. I don't remember him specifically, she admitted, but I worked with so many people and dogs. From what I've gathered, Richard Marshall was quite taken with your approach to the animals, Martinez continued. He mentioned you by name several times in Hero's adoption paperwork, said you helped him see something special in the puppy that others missed. A fuzzy memory began to form. A tall man with dark hair, serious eyes but a kind smile. A man who had visited multiple times, always gravitating toward the same black and tan shepherd mix puppy that other adopters had passed over. Emma had worked with him during each visit, showing the man how intelligent and responsive the puppy was despite being quieter than his litter mates. I think I remember now, she said slowly. Not his name, but the person. He was so patient, spending hours just sitting with the puppy, talking to him, teaching him small commands. It was unusual. Most adopters want the friendly, outgoing puppies, but he deliberately chose the thoughtful one. That sounds like the Richard Marshall I've heard about, Martinez said. By all accounts, he was a deliberate, thoughtful person himself, the type who planned for contingencies. But to name me as Jason's guardian based on a few interactions at a shelter, that seems extreme. I agree it's unusual, Martinez conceded. Everyone I've spoken with says the same thing. Richard was devoted to his son, obsessively protective after his wife's difficult pregnancy. He wouldn't have made this decision lightly. There was a pause. I'm hoping that letter Nancy mentioned will shed some light on his reasoning. Emma took a deep breath, trying to center herself. Has Sarah said anything about this? Did she know I was named in the will? She claims she didn't, Martinez replied, skepticism evident in his tone. Says her brother never discussed guardianship arrangements with her. But given how many half-truths she's told so far, I'm taking everything she says with a grain of salt. What happens now? Emma asked, feeling adrift in a sea of uncertainty. Social services will need to evaluate the situation. The will creates a legal preference, but the courts still need to determine what's in Jason's best interest. Given that you had no prior knowledge of this arrangement, they'll want to assess your willingness and suitability. Martinez's tone softened slightly. No one expects you to upend your life for a child you just met, Emma. There are other options if this isn't something you want to pursue. The thought of Jason being placed with strangers after everything he'd been through, after losing both parents and being betrayed by his aunt and her boyfriend, made Emma's chest tighten painfully. But becoming the guardian of an 8-year-old boy? She lived in a 1-bedroom apartment, worked long hours at the clinic, and had never even considered having children of her own yet. I need time to think, she said finally. This is all happening so fast. Of course, Martinez agreed. Jason won't be discharged for another day or two. Take the time you need, but... He hesitated. Would you like my personal opinion? Please. There's something special happening here, Emma. The way Hero found you specifically against all odds. The way you connected with Jason immediately. The fact that his father somehow saw something in you years ago that led him to make this extraordinary decision. I'm not a superstitious man, but sometimes life has a way of putting people exactly where they need to be. After ending the call with Martinez, Emma remained in the park until twilight began to settle over Maplewood. Her mind kept returning to that shadowy memory of Richard Marshall, the man who had so carefully chosen Hero, who had seen potential in a quiet, thoughtful puppy that others overlooked. Had he seen something in Emma too? Something that made him trust her with his most precious responsibility? As darkness fell completely, Emma finally rose from the bench and made her way back to her car. One thing was certain. She needed to return to Lakeside tomorrow. Whatever answers existed, she wouldn't find them sitting alone in a park in Maplewood. The next morning, after arranging to take a few personal days from the clinic, Emma packed an overnight bag and began the now familiar drive to Lakeside. She had slept poorly, her dreams filled with fragmented images. A rain-soaked dog carrying a precious burden, a small boy huddled in a dark space, a tall man with kind eyes kneeling beside a puppy in a shelter. When she arrived at Lakeside Memorial Hospital, Emma found Detective Martinez waiting for her in the lobby, a thick folder tucked under his arm and a cup of coffee in his hand. You made good time, he greeted her, offering a second cup he'd been holding. I thought you might need this. Thanks, Emma said gratefully, accepting the coffee. Any updates? Several, actually. The biggest one is that the missing letter has been found. Emma nearly choked on her first sip of coffee. What? Where? In the crawl space where Jason was hiding, Martinez said, a hint of awe in his voice. The boy had it with him the whole time. It was inside a waterproof case along with his father's watch, the one Brad was so desperate to get his hands on. Has anyone read it? Emma asked, her heart racing. Martinez shook his head. Jason refused to give it to anyone but you. Said his dad was very clear about that. He gestured toward the elevators. He's waiting for you. As they rode the elevator to the pediatric floor, Martinez filled her in on other developments. Brad Thompson was facing multiple charges, including child abuse, assault, and attempted kidnapping. Sarah Marshall's situation was more complex. While there was evidence she had been physically abused by Brad, there were also indications she had been complicit in the search for Richard's watch and had known about at least some of the abuse Jason suffered. Social Services is leaning toward placing Jason in foster care if you decline guardianship, Martinez said as they exited the elevator. There are no other close relatives suitable for placement. The weight of responsibility pressed on Emma's shoulders. A week ago, her biggest concern had been managing her work schedule and keeping Milo from scratching her furniture. Now she was contemplating becoming responsible for a traumatized 8-year-old boy. As they approached Jason's room, a familiar bark greeted them. Through the door's window, Emma could see Hero standing at attention beside the bed, his tail wagging vigorously at the sight of her. Beside him, Jason sat cross-legged on the bed, Pocket curled in his lap, both watching the door expectantly. "He's been waiting for you all morning," Martinez said softly. "They all have." Jason's face lit up when Emma entered the room, his eyes brighter and more animated than she had seen them before. The oxygen tube was gone, and though he still had an IV, he looked remarkably improved from the pale, frightened child they had found in the crawl space. "You came back," he exclaimed as Hero rushed to greet Emma, his entire body wiggling with joy. "Of course I did," Emma said, kneeling to embrace the dog before approaching the bed. "I promised, didn't I?" Jason nodded solemnly, then reached under his pillow and withdrew a slim metal case about the size of a paperback book. "I have something for you," he said, his voice suddenly serious beyond his years. "Dad said I should give it to you if anything ever happened to him and Mom. I kept it safe with his special watch." Emma glanced at Martinez, who nodded encouragingly, then carefully took the case from Jason's outstretched hand. It was made of brushed aluminum, with a simple latch that opened easily at her touch. Inside was a sealed envelope with her name written on it in bold, masculine handwriting. "Dad wrote it right after they got Hero," Jason explained, watching her intently. "He made me promise to remember where it was and to make sure you got it if anything bad happened." Emma's hands trembled slightly as she held the envelope. "Did he tell you what it says?" Jason shook his head. "Just that it was important, that it would explain everything." He hesitated, then added in a smaller voice, "Are you mad that Dad picked you to take care of me?" "No, Jason, not at all," Emma assured him quickly. "I'm just surprised. I didn't know your dad very well." "But he knew you," Jason said with the absolute confidence of a child. "He said you were the one who saw what Hero could be when he was just a puppy, that you understood things about animals that most people don't." Emma exchanged another glance with Martinez, who seemed content to remain a silent observer of this exchange. "Would it be okay if I read this now?" she asked Jason. The boy nodded, settling back against his pillows with Pocket purring contentedly in his lap. Hero positioned himself beside Emma as she carefully opened the envelope and unfolded several pages of handwritten text. "Dear Emma, if you're reading this, then something has happened to both Lisa and me, and Jason has found his way to you with Hero's help. I know this must seem incredibly strange, receiving a letter from a man you barely remember, who is trusting you with his most precious treasure, his son. Let me explain as best I can. 3 years ago, I visited the Maplewood Animal Shelter looking for a companion. My wife was pregnant with Jason, and I wanted a dog who could grow up alongside our child. I'd researched breeds extensively and had a clear idea of what I was looking for. But then I met you. You were working with a litter of shepherd mix puppies that day. While other shelter workers were showcasing the outgoing, energetic puppies, you noticed my interest in the quiet one watching from the corner. That one's special, you told me. He sees everything. Most people don't notice how much he understands. Over my next few visits, you showed me how to connect with him, how to recognize the intelligence behind his eyes. You told me that some dogs are old souls, that they come into our lives for specific purposes. This one, you said, will be more than just a pet. He'll be a guardian. You probably don't remember saying these things. For you, I was just one of many adopters. But your words stayed with me, and everything you said about that puppy proved true. Hero has been extraordinary from the beginning. Intuitive, protective, seemingly able to understand complex situations in ways no dog should. As Jason grew, the bond between him and Hero became something remarkable to witness. The dog anticipated Jason's needs, comforted him during storms, and once even alerted us to Jason having a high fever before we'd noticed any symptoms. Last year, Lisa and I were in a minor car accident. Nothing serious, but it shook us both. We realized we needed to put proper guardianship plans in place for Jason. The obvious choice was my sister Sarah, but something held me back from finalizing that arrangement. Then one night, I had a dream so vivid it felt like a visitation. In it, Hero was leading Jason through a storm to a woman's door, your door. When I woke, I knew with absolute certainty what I needed to do. I researched you, forgive the intrusion, and discovered you'd completed your training and were working at the Maplewood Animal Clinic. You'd established yourself as someone with a special gift for understanding and helping animals. Everything I learned only confirmed what I'd glimpsed during our brief interactions at the shelter, that you possess a rare compassion and insight. I know this is an enormous thing to ask of a virtual stranger. You have every right to decline. But if there was one thing I learned from you, it's that sometimes the deepest connections in life defy conventional explanation. The way you connected with that quiet puppy in the corner, the way Hero has connected with our family, and perhaps the way you and Jason might connect if given the chance. If you're willing, the enclosed documents grant you guardianship of Jason. Our attorney has all the financial details. There's a trust to provide for Jason's care and education, and funds to help you relocate to a larger home if needed. I've instructed Jason that if anything happens to Lisa and me, he should trust Hero to find you. It sounds crazy, I know, but I've seen what that dog can do, and I believe with my whole heart that he would move heaven and earth to protect my son and fulfill his purpose. Whether you accept this responsibility or not, please know that your brief kindness years ago made a lasting impact on our family. You helped me find not just a pet, but a guardian for my son when he would need one most. With deepest gratitude and hope, Richard Marshall. Emma lowered the letter, tears streaming freely down her face. The room had fallen completely silent except for Pocket's steady purring and Hero's soft breathing beside her. "Are you okay?" Jason asked finally, his young face creased with concern. "Yes," Emma managed, wiping her eyes. "Your dad wrote a beautiful letter. Does it explain why he picked you?" Emma nodded, still trying to process the extraordinary story Richard Marshall had shared. "It does. Your dad and I met when he adopted Hero from the shelter where I used to work. I helped him see how special Hero was. Dad always said Hero was the smartest dog in the world," Jason said proudly, scratching behind the dog's ears. "He said Hero would always find a way to protect me." "And he did," Emma agreed, looking at the remarkable dog with new understanding. Had Hero somehow known, on some level beyond human comprehension, that he needed to find Emma specifically that rainy night? Had Richard Marshall's certainty somehow imprinted on the dog, creating a mission that transcended ordinary animal behavior? It seemed impossible, and yet the evidence was right here in this room. A dog who had carried a kitten through the rain to find exactly the person his owner had designated years before. Martinez cleared his throat gently. "I should step outside and give you two some privacy. Nancy Wilson from Social Services will be here soon to discuss next steps. After the detective left, Emma moved to sit on the edge of Jason's bed. Hero immediately repositioned himself to be touching both of them as if physically connecting them. "Jason," Emma said carefully, "your dad gave me a choice about becoming your guardian, but you should have a choice too. How would you feel about coming to live with me in Maplewood? With Hero and Pocket, of course." Jason studied her face with an intensity that reminded her of Hero's evaluating gaze. "Would we live in your apartment?" "For a little while," Emma said, her mind already racing ahead to practical considerations. "But we'd probably need to find a bigger place eventually, maybe even a house with a yard for Hero. Could I bring my science books and my rock collection?" "Of course," Emma smiled. "All of your things." Jason considered this seriously, absently stroking Pocket as he thought. "Would I have to change schools?" "Yes, you'd go to school in Maplewood. But we could visit Lakeside sometimes if you wanted to see your friends." The boy was quiet for a long moment, then asked in a small voice, "Would you be my mom now?" Emma's heart constricted. "No, Jason. I could never replace your mom. I'd be your guardian. Someone who takes care of you and loves you, but who always honors the memory of your parents." Jason nodded, seeming satisfied with this answer. "Dad picked you for a reason," he said finally. "And Hero found you when I needed help. I think it's supposed to be you." Out of the mouths of babes, Emma thought, marveling at the simple wisdom in the child's words. She looked at Hero, who was watching them both with those impossibly intelligent eyes, and at Pocket, who had now stretched out comfortably across Jason's lap, completely at ease. A week ago, she had been a woman with a cat and a predictable life. Now she was contemplating becoming the guardian of an 8-year-old boy with a remarkable dog and a rescued kitten. It was terrifying and overwhelming and completely outside anything she had ever planned for herself. And yet it felt inexplicably right, as if she had been moving toward this moment her entire life without knowing it. "Then it's decided," Emma said, reaching out to take Jason's small hand in hers. "We'll be a family. You, me, Hero, Pocket, and Milo too." "Who's Milo?" Jason asked, his eyes widening. "My cat," Emma smiled. "I think you'll like him. He's very patient with visitors." Outside the window, the sun broke through clouds that had been threatening rain all morning, sending a shaft of golden light across the hospital bed where they sat. Hero lifted his head to the warmth, his eyes half closing in contentment. In that moment of perfect stillness, Emma felt something settle in her soul, a certainty that transcended logic and planning. Whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them together. A boy, a woman, a remarkable dog, and the mysterious bonds that had brought them together against all odds. Hero had carried more than a kitten in a backpack that rainy night. He had carried hope, protection, and the fulfillment of a promise made years before. And in doing so, he had created something new and precious. A family formed not by blood, but by choice, compassion, and perhaps a touch of destiny. Emma squeezed Jason's hand gently. "Your dad was right about Hero being special," she said softly. "And I think he was right about us too." Outside in the hallway, Detective Martinez watched through the window as Emma, Jason, and Hero formed a circle on the hospital bed, the small kitten nestled in their midst. He had seen many things in his years as a police officer, but few as extraordinary as a dog who had journeyed through the rain to fulfill his purpose and protect the child entrusted to his care. Some stories defied logical explanation, Martinez thought as he turned away to give them privacy, and sometimes that was exactly as it should be.